Hello, preppers, and welcome to another episode of the Prepper Podcast. And yes, good news, I'm not on my own again. So there is people coming saving me on this podcast now. I like to introduce Pam, or we'll say Blue, because that's how you're best known, from Blue Self-Reliance. How are you doing, Blue?
Good. Thank you. And thank you for having me. This is cool.
Right. So we'll just ask you about you to begin with. So the big question always when you first come on here is, are you a prepper or do you class yourself as a prepper?
That's a loaded question, really, isn't it? I like to say I'm prepared.
Yep.
Rather than purposefully prepping, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So you're not a prepper for a specific reason. It's more that you're just always ready for that kind of thing.
Pretty much. There are things that you kind of notice that are going on and you think, oh, actually, maybe we should kind of change things up a little bit.
Yeah, pivot according to the world.
Pivot. Plot twist.
So what started you to become more self-reliant, more prepared? Was there anything specific that triggered you into that, or is it just how you've always been brought up?
I think it was my dad. Honestly, he started all this. My dad was one of the assistant secretaries for defence in Australia.
Wow.
Right up until I was about 5. So he was pretty high up in the DOD. He'd been in the Air Force. He retired as a group captain on the Friday and walked straight back into his office on the Monday as a civilian. So, you know, he worked in there his entire life. But he was a very quiet man, didn't talk very much about a lot of things, but there were certain things that he would say and do that would, when he said them, you had to pay attention.
Yeah.
You know, he'd put me in the direction of certain books and he'd say, you know, I think you should read this.
Yeah.
And you'd look at the book and go, are you insane?
Subliminally teaching you.
Just a little bit. And he was very, as much as we lived in the city, because we lived in Canberra, but I actually got brought up in Wales because my mother's Welsh. We always lived in smaller places. When it came to living in this country, we lived in small villages.
Yeah.
But we lived in Canberra because that was where his work was and that's where he was based, and, you know, but his preference was to live in much smaller places than it was to live in big cities.
You think that was tactical? Just a little bit. That's very interesting. So did you literally just carry on in that mindset from there, or did you do what most of us do and rebel against the parents and not care about anything and all of a sudden start again?
I definitely had my fair share of rebellion. Definitely my fair share of rebellion. I was never what my mother would have liked as a daughter. Very much the opposite of what my mother would have liked as a daughter, whereas my dad used to come up behind me and just go, well done.
There you go. The most influential parent there then, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So from that, what made you start or decide? Because I don't know about you, but I get a bit stick off to the community. The fact, because obviously people talk about operational security when you're a prepper. I'll do that because, you know, just prepared. People talk about that like it's like the be all and end all. So what made you decide to start sharing on YouTube?
I was a chef for 26 years. I did a lot of stuff in my life up until about 2013 when I broke my back.
Right.
And I couldn't work anymore. I'm still not allowed to work as a chef because I'm unsafe. Because I can be walking through my house, and all of a sudden I'll be sitting on the floor because my back decides to go squish, and then I've got no legs. So
yeah,
you
not
know,
something you want in an industrial kitchen environment.
No, it's not exactly a safe environment to be in, you know.
No.
So I chose not to do surgery. I could have done surgery and had years and years and years of surgeries, and I chose not to do that. I thought, you know what, there's other ways, and
Yeah.
you know, I can do what I can to strengthen myself in a more natural, safer way to do it, rather than make myself into a permanent cripple. You know,
was that a risk of the surgery then, that you could
absolutely.
end up paralyzed?
There's only a 30% chance it's going to work.
Oh well, yeah.
You know, so it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to take those odds. You know,
I don't blame you. I would lose at a tombola if I bought the only ticket. You know, so
yeah, exactly. I mean, but it just means I had to modify what I was doing.
Yeah,
I can only do like tasks that take me 5-10 minutes if I'm standing, which is fine. That's not a problem. I just find somewhere to sit and do it instead. You know, and that's not a problem. But I kind of felt that I was wasting away because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do and what was in me to do. So where I was living at the time, I helped set up a food bank. And as part of that, we set up a cooking school and craft group as well to get people involved with each other, because if you're in a situation where you need a food bank, you can feel very isolated. So it was kind of bringing people back together so that they were starting to learn skills as well. Because also the other problem that we have is you go to a food bank and you might get probably 80% of what you get is stuff that you don't buy every week. You might not ever buy ever. And you might not have the mental capacity at that moment, because of the level of stress you're under, to know what to do with it other than open it.
Yeah.
So it's finding things to do with what you have that will make a meal to make that stretch. And that's a skill that takes time to learn sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting. It brings us on to our main point, which is about the importance of them kind of skills, any sort of prepping skills, you know, because it's all right. I mean, I recommend stuff. I do reviews on products, but it doesn't mean fill your house with just that. If you don't know what to do with it all, it's going to be useless. You could buy every chef tool in the sun, but if you don't know how to chop a potato, you're not going to get very far.
No, exactly. And there's a lot to it as well. I mean, statistics have shown us that it's taken 3 generations for people to become completely reliant on supermarkets and convenience food. So they don't cook as much as they do. They don't teach it in schools as much as they did. They don't teach the life skills they used to. So what I do now from where I am is I run workshops teaching people life skills, practical life skills. But I do it on a level of what we call on a rainwater budget, which is, you know, you've heard about living a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget. Well, the people that I work with don't even have a beer budget. They've got a rainwater budget. So it's teaching them the skills to do with what little they do have, helping them to make more informed decisions and have the skills to be able to make what they do have, which is precious little, go as far as it can do, you know?
Yeah, I found that interesting with, I don't know if you saw, it was quite a while ago now, but it was trending where people were doing that living below challenge, and they had to live for a week off $5 or £5, wherever you were. And I was baffled, because I was just thinking, bag of rice, bag of pasta, vegetables, and the rest is seasoning. That I could feed myself for 2 weeks, never mind a week.
Well, that's it. But people want variety, and part of what I do is I can show them other ways. Like, I've just done a thing on making your own spring rolls. It cost me under £4 to make 22 of them, and they're bigger than the ones we get at the takeaway. And him sitting over there, he doesn't want me to stop making them. You know?
Oh, you mean victim of your own success in that case.
Yeah, just a little bit. But it does mean that instead of paying £6 to get 2, I paid 4. We've got 22. So that's put some in the freezer. And the biggest cost out of all of it was the £2.10 for the wrappers, which you get 30 in a pack. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's weird that yeah, it's weird. It's not even, I wouldn't even class it as prepping, but it's just weird how people cannot seem to budget because they're used to this convenience food lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay that I'm saving money. I'm not getting a takeaway. I'm going to spend £5 on a pizza. Well, no, why don't you get some dough and some cheese and tomato and do it for half the price?
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like dough making and stuff like that, people go, oh, I'm going to make bread. And then they try it once and it doesn't work.
Yep.
And it could be that they're using yeast that's been sitting in their fridge for two years. You know, their flour is out of date. It could be that their house is too cold or too hot. It could be any number of things that have not gone quite right. But the point is that if you want to learn to make bread, it's a process.
Yeah.
So it's all very well having all this stuff that you want to do to make bread. And I'm going to make sourdough and SHTF and all of this kind of stuff. Well, if you don't know how to do that now, you're never going to be able to do it in a situation like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right now you've got the mod cons and you've got time to practice things like that. You know, it is insane. I mean, I can't criticize anyone. I'm nearly 40 and I've only just figured out how to cook rice right. So
really.
Please excuse the peanut gallery.
No, I can cook rice, but it always ends up as the almost like Japanese style sticky rice. You know what I mean?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it was edible.
Yeah.
Right. So, a lot of this stuff is people having to go out there and learn, but it's also like you've done. You've got the channel, and people can watch and learn from that. And how accessible do you think it is? I mean, because people say, "Oh, I haven't got the time to learn how to cook. It's just easier to do this." How long would you say if somebody from complete scratch wanted to learn through the basics, pasta and all that? How much time would they have to commit to something like that?
Not a lot.
No.
I mean, yes, okay, I'm practiced, but I can knock together a pasta meal faster than you can get Macca's delivered.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyone can do that, it's practice. It's learning to do these things. If you get the kids involved, if you've got kids and you want to get the kids involved, because the kids are going to get more interested in what's actually on their plate if they're involved with making it.
Yeah. I've found that. I found that. Yeah, from a very young age as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my kids were always sitting at my kitchen table. So they were always around it. They were always around the food. And when we had our own property, they were always outside. They were always in the garden. They were always in the veg garden. They were always somewhere attached to me or the property. Yeah. And they were learning all the time, And because of that, they were always more interested.
Yeah.
So, and I was very lucky that way, I think, when it came to my kids, because, I used to do catering on the side occasionally. And there was one instance where my then 3-year-old son had disappeared and we couldn't find him. But we also couldn't find a very expensive raw camembert cheese.
I know where this is going.
We eventually found him behind a chair in the living room, which none of us could have got behind We had to pull the chair out to find him. And he's sitting there with the whole thing just taking chunks out of it. This thing even like 20 years ago cost $30. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I was just lucky that the person whose place it was, they were like, let him go for it. If he's going to eat it, let him go for it,
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
So self-reliance, obviously, it's the title of your channel. I mean, some people would see that as energy, power, growing your own food, things like that. And I did notice you did a collaboration video with lots of people showing their like micro gardens and things like that, which was cool to see the different setups and that. Is that something you practice? Do you grow your own stuff? Yeah,
we do. We have a front garden that was basically where when we moved in here a couple of years ago, we were very upset to find that the locals were using it to walk their dogs on. It's probably a space that's 10 foot by 8 foot out the front, but we've since fenced it all off, and that's our in-ground beds there. And then out the back, which is a courtyard that's no bigger than 21 feet across by 15 feet at its widest point. That now has the greenhouse and the shed, plus that's where the containers go. So plus it's got an area that we're working on that we can actually sit in. Yeah. Because, we don't sit in a pot. We'd like to sit at a table and chairs because we've got a little bit of decorum about us,
So can I ask, I mean, that's not a massive amount of like land. We're not talking acres of growth here. And when I was mentioning on one of my videos about growing your own stuff, and I want to start doing that in my garden, somebody said, oh, you need half an acre of land to feed your family. How much food can you generate through that? Could you live off just that, do you think? If you had to?
No, you couldn't live on just what we have. You could make a really good stab at it.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're doing it. The way that we do it is that we grow the stuff that's expensive to buy.
Right.
Okay, so we don't grow potatoes because they take up far too much space. We don't grow onions because they take up far too much space. If we grew enough onions for a year for us, and potatoes, that'd be our whole front bed gone.
Yeah.
So it's not worth it, and we don't really eat enough potatoes to make it worthwhile growing them unless it was a specific variety we wanted to, like a fir apple, which is just a fancy knobbly purpley looking thing, or or something like a marfona, which is the kind of potato you'll find at the restaurant that's a little bit sweeter.
Right, okay.
That you sometimes get oh, hang on a second, that's quite sweet. Why is that sweet? That's a marfona. But we would put maybe a couple in a container.
Yeah.
And, grow them for a special occasion kind of thing.
So what's the majority of what you grow, sorry?
Okay, so we do the usual tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that. I've got 2 grapevines. I've also got peach tree, apricot tree, plum tree, fig, olive, bay, cherry, blueberry. Trying to think. Raspberries. We've got golden and red raspberries. We've got rhubarb. We've got a loganberry. But they're all things that cost a wee bit more to buy. Now, when we got the trees, we got them during lockdown.
Yeah.
From the supermarket. And they were being marked down because they were having to sell them off because no one was buying them, because obviously no one's going to the garden centre because they're not allowed to go out, sort of thing. So we bought them all then. This is last year was the first year that we've seen some of them get fruit.
Okay.
So people do buy a lot of fruit trees and think, oh, I should be having fruit this year. No, it can take anywhere from 7 to 10 years to get fruit.
Yeah. So that's a long-term commitment when it's the tree.
Oh,
you can buy them at different levels though, can't you? So you could buy one that's almost fruiting already. That's right?
You could, but you're going to be looking at anywhere between £60 and £100 for that.
Yeah. So
whereas
it's an investment.
10 or 15 quid. So I'd rather pay the 10, 15 quid and have them for sitting there looking pretty for a bit. And then walk out one day and go, oh, look, we got some cherries. We got six cherries. That counts.
That counts. That definitely counts. Yeah. So how much investment? Obviously you say it's saving money. Okay. And I'm fully behind that.
It was saving money.
No, I mean, like, it's cheaper.
No.
You plant the stuff that's to grow. So what kind of investment? Yeah. You've got an initial investment on tools. I'm not including that. I'm saying like to seed and to nurture, to grow.
It absolutely depends.
Yeah.
That depends on you. I've just purchased some new seeds. There's 107 packets in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be planting them all this year. We just don't have the room for it. Let's be honest. It's just not going to happen. But I got them from a company that specializes in selling cheaper seeds because they don't have the fancy packets. They're just in the little foil bit that you would get inside the fancy packet, Yeah. But because of that, those packets of seeds were only 39p each.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So instead of 3 or 4 quid a packet, and being only able to buy 10 packets, I've been able to buy a shed ton more.
Yeah.
Because, I've shopped around, but it's learning to shop around and not grabbing the first thing that comes into hand, and also being very careful on the varieties you buy.
Yeah. Cool.
Just because some of those only have 10 seeds in, all of them I can save seeds from.
Right. Yeah. So it becomes sort of self-sustaining a bit. Yeah. So is your self-reliance from what I've seen of the channel, is it all to do with the growing and the not wasting rather than like power and everything else with that?
That's kind of where we've gone with it at the moment.
Yeah.
I am looking at doing a series very soon on hand tools. It is something that I am wanting more and more of, hand equipment rather than electric equipment. There seems to be a big push at the moment for people to buy, this new air fryer or this new Instapot or this new whatever. And then you've got a whole load of people who just don't know how to use it. They've used it wrong. So, and then just it gets left in a corner, Yeah. But they're all supposed to be money-saving devices. Well, they're only money-saving if you know what you're doing with them.
Yeah.
And you do your research before you buy them. So I do sort of small workshops on a Friday to do with stuff like that. Where we do a live and sort of people can ask their questions when they're there and stuff. So
So the hand tools you mentioned, because instead of electric, is that for a reason? Are you prepping for the chance of no power there, or is it just a preference?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
I'm being really careful here. I know I'm being really careful. Yeah. Okay. I honestly do believe that there will be a point where we are going to have a major issue when it comes to electric. At the moment, we've got issues when it comes down to the bills. We're quite lucky here that the house that we're in has solar panels on it and came with those, but they are attached to the grid, which means that if there was a grid down situation, they'd be useless.
You're right. They're not stored
They've got
to
no
storage battery
batteries.
for you. Yeah.
No.
That's a shame. Yeah.
So it's what I'm trying to move towards is showing people that it's all very well. You've got all your equipment, you've got all your zip zappy equipment. It's all great. It's all wonderful. But what's going to happen when those lights go out? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've got friends across the world that are already having rolling blackouts.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of trying to do dinner or you're trying to do some other task and you've got no other tools to do it with, but you might have the tools, but you don't know how to use them, well,
yeah,
that's going to be a situation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the power supply is probably the most brittle thing amongst everything, because not just CMEs and EMPs, what people's mentioned, but I'm talking more like our reliance still on fuels that, you know, are coming from other countries and things like that. And the rate we're using it at is just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
You know?
Because I don't think people really get it just yet.
No.
Because it hasn't fully affected them as it might have. Like, you know, I've had the effects of not having electric for a week and a half because of storms and floodings and stuff like that. We've had to go outside and cook outside and you know, cook over flames. Well, if you don't know how to cook over a flame, just a wood fire, not talking about having bottled gas and barbecues and all that fancy stuff, because that's fancy. I'm just talking about having to get a ring of stones, chuck some wood on there and hope that you've got enough coals to cook with. You know, that's what I'm looking at. That's, you know, and that is a skill. That's not something that you can just learn overnight. That is something you need to practice. And if you are going to be looking at prepping as a whole thing, these are skills you're going to have to learn. You know, things like soap making, bread making, pasta making, cooking over fires, preserving your food. Because if you're not gardening, or if you are gardening even, you're going to have gluts of stuff. Well, you can't just leave it, because soft fruit, anything like that, even the tomatoes are only going to last a certain amount of time. Everything's going to go off if you don't learn how to, you know, preserve it. I flat out refuse to use a pressure canner. I will not use them. There's a couple of reasons. One is the cost of them, the cost involved. It's extortionate and it's unrealistic for the average person, especially over here in this country. The lids aren't reusable. That's another reason. To have, so the average average 4-person family for a year, if you were going to preserve all of your food using pressure canning methods, you would have to have 1,500 bottles of preserved food. So when you look at it at that level, and they're charging anywhere from 20 to 30 pounds for pint jars, mason jars, and that's not including replacement lids, that ends up being an extortionate amount of money that's not necessary. So I use water bathing methods, I use bottling, I use hot packing, I use smoking, I use air drying. Those are pretty much my main, you know,
one thing
methods, but they're things that we've always done.
One thing I looked at was because I was looking at the canning stuff, because everyone jumped on my back about the Mylar bags. So I was looking at the canning stuff. But one thing I did see was like a hand one that one of the guys on YouTube used, and it was like it was only about £25 or something, and it was like a vacuum sealer for a jar or a can sort of thing, and that's a hand one. I'm not sure how good they are. Have you tried them? Have you used them? Or?
You can only use those for dry ingredients. You can't use them for wet ones.
Right.
Okay. So the other issue you have with the pressure canner is it can't be used over a fire, like a wood fire. Right. Because you have to keep a certain amount of pressure on it. It has to be electrical or gas, and it has to be able to be tempered, and it has to be able to be controlled. You can't necessarily do that with charcoal or a fire. What you can do is pot of water and water bath over an open fire.
Yeah,
now
that's
yes, it
probably
takes longer.
more sustainable without power as well, obviously.
Absolutely more sustainable without power. Yes, it takes longer, and the average, what they call a quart, which is about, I think it's our litre jars. It's just under a litre. The basic rule of thumb is 2 hours for veg, 3 hours for meat, and mixed jars. And that you take half an hour off that if you're doing pints.
Right. Okay.
But that's, but you can do that over a wood fire.
Right. That's interesting. That's interesting. Do you have any videos on your channel about that, out of curiosity?
I haven't yet, but it is something that is in the work for the next.
Get one up so I can follow your guide. With what you do, is obviously it's great. I mean, I watched the mushroom one the other day, and the reason I watched it is I don't like mushrooms. So,
it doesn't taste
so
like
I need to ask you, does it taste like ketchup?
No, it tastes like Worcestershire sauce.
Oh, right, okay.
It's basically the mother product of what Worcestershire sauce was before it was Worcestershire sauce. Mushroom ketchup is out there and has been out there. You can buy it on the shelves now. It's there now. But this is something that has been used. It was used for over 100 years, recorded 100 years before Worcestershire sauce was made.
Yeah.
And it's what people like you and I would have done, when we had gluts of mushrooms in the autumn. It was a way of keeping them preserved.
Yeah, I do like that, because you used everything, and it's like when you were making it, the mulch that was left, I'm like, well, what are you going to do with that? And you dried that and used the power. It was brilliant. So I do like that aspect of, because I'm probably a bit too wasteful, to be fair. I need to get better at that one.
I've got a few videos that are coming out on cooking things that you wouldn't expect to be able to cook with, and it's usually what we see as waste. I've actually got, not sure if it's 3 or 4 videos on cooking with mango peel.
Okay. Interesting.
Where I've made cake, I've made tea, I made a curry, and I made a jam.
Nice.
Using mango peels. And these are normal recipes that are actually used in places like India and places like that. And I think a lot of people think, oh, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
If it means that you're going to put a meal on the table and you're going to be able to feed your family again, how is that a bad thing?
Yeah, I can't imagine in a situation like SHTF that you'd want to throw any sort of anything that's even slightly edible away.
No. So there's going to be a lot of videos coming out where you do things like, a lot of people don't realize you can use banana peels, but they're completely edible. There's a few glut videos coming out shortly. I've just been scheduling them all up so they come out each week, and stuff like that. But it's skills. It's all I can say is skills, really.
Yeah. Practice.
Yeah. Mozart wasn't born a genius. He still had to sit there at 3 years old because his mother made him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to do that now. I mean, my flaw is I practice and film it at the same time. So my mistakes, everybody gets to see.
Oh yeah, I've got some videos like that. One of my first attempts at doing sourdough is on a playlist called "What Not to Do." It's on there. Yeah. If I do a mistake video, I put it on there because people need to see that I'm not perfect either. And if we're learning, we can learn together and discuss the mistakes, and so that we know not to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of my point when I do anything like that, because I was sick of the short videos where you just see a hand throw this in the bowl, this in the bowl, this in the bowl.
Yeah.
Magically, it appears into a muffin and it's perfectly cooked, you know, looks store-bought.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's not helping me. What happens when it goes this weird sticky texture?
Yeah, no, I'm a staunch supporter in, if you're making it at home, it doesn't have to look like it came out of Pinterest.
Yeah.
You know, we're home cooks. You know, yes, okay, I was a chef for 26 years, but I'm a home cook.
Yeah.
Bottom line, I don't have to do fancy schmancy stuff for, you know, my family, because if they had to wait that long to get their food, would be under attack. You know, it would not be safe. I mean, you know, when my lot get round the table, it's put the pot in the middle of the table and back away very quickly before they chew your fingers off. You know, there's no.
Yeah, I grew up in that kind of family.
Yeah.
eat fast or don't eat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I have one son who has fork marks to this day in the back of his hand because he tried to take his brother's food off his plate, tried to steal one of his potatoes. So yeah,
fair game. Don't steal food.
Don't do it. You know, or be quicker, one or the other.
Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap this up? Is there anything you'd like to cover, or have we covered it all?
I think pretty much covered it all. I think it's just so important to get your skills. I mean, it's one of the things that I do is I pick a skill over winter when it's quiet in the garden and you can't really go outside and do a lot. Pick a skill you can learn. Do that over the winter. Practice it over the winter. Like if you want to get into soap making, if you want to get into making your own cleaning products, any of that kind of stuff, learn it over the winter.
Yeah.
You know, you're not doing anything else anyway. And a lot of the other you can do while watching TV anyway, because I do it. I stick on a movie and start making whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. And
veg, isn't it? The veg to people is very on what's the word? I think it's like growing what do you call it? Radishes.
Yeah.
Grow radish. Everybody grows a radish, but nobody lets it go to seed.
Yeah.
Nobody ever.
Repeat that for me, because I didn't quite pick up all of it. What was he saying?
Sorry about that.
You all right?
My partner's very dyslexic, so he sometimes stumbles over his words a bit. He was just saying when people grow radishes, people think that's a really easy thing to grow. Number one, it's not. It's actually quite a diva type thing. And even though everyone says, oh, yeah, give the kids a packet of radishes and they'll learn to grow them, they tend to run to seed before you get a bulb on them.
Right.
But what people don't know is that those seed pods are actually edible as well.
Right. Okay.
But they've got to be the nice juicy green ones, not when they just go over to the brown.
They taste like peanuts.
They do. They taste like spicy peanuts.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, and you get hundreds. You get hundreds off one.
Oh, I'd like to. I was about to say I'd like to try that, but I can't stand peanuts, so that might not be for me. I will add on to what you're saying there with the skills of, because I know what people are like with excuses, and I haven't got time.
Yes.
Because people always say they haven't got time. They haven't got time.
If you've got time to sit down and watch a movie, what are your hands doing?
Exactly. I mean, I swear by Arnold. While before he was really rich and famous, he was doing a building trade, still training for Mr. Universe and learning a new language and sleeping 6 hours. And he did that for nearly a year, if not more. If you can dedicate half an hour a day or an hour a day to learning a skill, think where you'll be in a year's time.
Yeah.
You know,
or even just doing a job a day, because I've got a couple of series where I did a job a day. One.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do one job a day for a year, that's 365 jobs you've done. Can you imagine what you would have achieved in that 365 days? Like just if doing one thing, and it doesn't have to take an hour. You might just sit there and sow some seeds.
Yeah.
5-10 minutes, you're done.
Yeah.
Right? That's your one job. Well, on the next day, you might actually start making some sourdough starter or whatever. But it's,
Yeah. And
it's
learn from your mistakes. Don't give up with it.
Yeah.
There's loads of people online. This is Blue's on the bottom of the screen now is Blue Self-Reliance. That's her channel. I'm sure if you do something wrong and you go in the comments, she'll find the time to answer you. We also have a forum, which I believe you signed up to as well, Blue.
I did. Yes, that was me.
I'm sure you'll be jumping on there and making some topics on this subject, so that then people can come and ask you questions on there as well. That would be great.
Yeah.
So I think that's about us for time. I've really appreciated having you on here. And I will next time we speak, I'll have tried 10 different experiments, and I'll bring you on for an hour to tell me how I've done everything wrong. How's that?
That's awesome. That's great, because every wrong thing is another step forward to getting it right. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to say goodbye to everyone.
See you later.
And from me, thanks for watching the video. Do appreciate it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe. As soon as you finish, don't forget to go over to Blue's channel, give her a subscribe, and check out some cool, awesome hacks, tricks, and stuff like that. It's great. See you all in the next one. Bye.